Welcome to our panel today about the future of localization. The topic will be how to navigate disruptive technologies, data, strategy, automation, and AI. And I think if we all think about how often we've heard the word disruption at this conference, we probably have to use the hundreds or thousands. So I think we're all clear. We're in for a ride in the next couple of months and years, and it's an exciting time. I'm super excited about the panel that we have today. I generally think that none of the institutions represented need an introduction, but I'll still ask everyone here to introduce themselves in a minute. Just a little bit of housekeeping up front. We'll keep 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. So please think about questions. If you don't, I'll monopolize the last 10 minutes and you don't want that. So please think about questions that you want to ask the panel. For some context, this is my first localization or LocWorld conference. I'm relatively new to the industry. I've joined Fraser CPO in February this year. My background is actually fintech, so I used to build NLP platforms for investment banks like Goldman Sachs. And I have to say, these conferences here are so much better than financial services. So thank you so much. Super diverse, people talk to each other. They wear different shoes. It's a breath of fresh air. Then, of course, a big thank you to the organizers. Thank you for having us today. Love Malmö. I think this is a great conference, although I've noticed that the buzz of the last couple of days has decreased a little bit this morning, and I think that's because I saw many people of you on the dance floor swinging away to ABBA. So bear with us. I hope this is going to be an exciting 40 minutes. And without further ado, I'll kindly ask the panel to introduce themselves, and I'll start with Chris.
Hi, everyone. Oh, thanks, Simone. I'm Chris Dell. I head up content at Booking.com. You said none of these kind of companies in introduction. That was not the case when I joined Booking.com 13 years ago. Like really, many markets around the world, people had not heard of us. Under content, it's a whole bunch of different things actually that we look after. It's things like geodata, which is basically where things are in the world. It's copywriting, particularly on the marketing side, UX, etc. It's looking after content moderation. We moderate about 15 million items of, for example, review content every month. And then it's localization, where we're doing upwards of 600 billion words a year. In total, the organization I head up is about 400 people, spread across about 45 locations around the world, of which about 250 are working in localization. So there we are. That's what I do.
Jay, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Jay Marciano. I'm the Director of MT. I'm glad you got to look at my title. Director of MT Outreach and Strategy at Lengoo. I'm also the President of AMPTA, the Association for Machine Translation in the Americas. Lengoo is a Berlin-based language service and technology provider. I like to think of us as a language service provider that goes into a phone booth, rips off the shirt, and it says LLM in a superhero kind of thing. So we help our customers to build up data sets and then do cool things with those data sets.
Cool. Ines?
Hi, my name is Ines Rubio. I am the Director of Language Services at National Instruments, NI. We do tests and measurements. So from a content perspective, this is rather technical content, technical documentation, software, hardware, marketing, sales type of content. And I lead a team of 25 people across the globe, much smaller than Chris. So different perspectives, and I'm really excited to be here today.
Cool. Tim?
Yeah, my name is Tim Cadenbach. I'm a developer evangelist for DeepL. I think I don't have to explain what DeepL does based on the last 2 days. I work with third parties, a lot of people like you who integrated DeepL into your own product offering, help solve API problems, pretty much build the developer community around DeepL.
Cool, thank you. So we have a great mix of global institutions and service providers, so I'll hope we get some diverse opinions today. Question number one that we'll kick off is obviously the elephant in the room around LLMs. So the question I have for the panel is, how do we see the future of LLMs, especially how does it relate to traditional approaches to machine translation? And are they dead? So maybe I'll start with Chris again.
Yeah, $1 million question. And we had such a fantastic panel discussion just before lunch, right, on this topic as well. I don't want to rehash that too much, but I could find myself kind of nodding vigorously with many of the things that they were kind of saying. We've done a little bit of kind of research ourselves within Booking.com. I think it was Alon made a brilliant point that actually this technology fundamentally isn't new, right? I mean, Transformer's been around since 2017. Within Booking.com, we actually build our own, have been building off Transformer since 2017, our own kind of machine translation approaches. And it's interesting because I do look after things like moderation. Actually, then our moderation approach, the machine learning part of it, is kind of built off what we've been training for translation, right? And then we take that, and then we've been able to build interesting kind of knowledge graphs and things like that. So all of this technology is kind of moving in that direction. It has been, I think, for some time. Of course, what's happened is ChatGPT captured the public's imagination, right? And as I kind of commented in another session also earlier today, not just the public's imagination, suddenly the imagination of executives, and then suddenly the entire world. Suddenly we've gone from kind of this kind of weird kind of backwater to like the sexiest thing in the entire business. Natural language processing, it matters. Well, I kind of already knew that. We all knew that. Everyone here knew that. I'm kind of excited because, I mean, look, everyone, I think, knows today, if you look at LLMs like for translation, like can it replace MT, latency is probably 10x what you would like, cost is probably 10x what you would like, but we also know that these things change over time, right? So that will probably kind of get fixed. I'm really excited about the opportunities for contextual translation, right? And I'm really excited about the opportunities for processing more genuinely natural language, because we don't write in very formal ways, and when you interact with customers, they don't write in very formal ways, and language evolves constantly, and that LLMs potentially will allow us to kind of move a little bit faster, have a little bit more context, customize even, kind of really kind of head towards personalization. That's the stuff that kind of excites me about it.
Cool.
Someone please argue.
Yeah, I can sort of. I think that LLMs can help dramatically improve translations. So the machine translation won't go away. We will have that, as you said it yourself. It's a specific thing for translation. It's fast, it's reliable, and way more than LLMs are today. But LLMs can really help improve translations in many ways. Like just the other day, I was talking to someone about how we can have a translation for a specific age group or for a specific social group, stuff like that, which goes way beyond traditional translation. And you even have to add some form of content to the translation, or you have to make sure the translation you have is socially acceptable. For example, that's something we discussed at DeepL a while ago. What if you have something that's totally fine in German, if you translate it to like English or Japanese, maybe that's even a bigger problem. The translation might be completely correct, but it's not socially acceptable. And that's something LLMs can dramatically help.
So, as we've heard multiple times, LLMs come out of neural machine translation. In a panel several weeks ago that I was on, we were asked, are we dinosaurs? Are we about to go extinct? And my response was, dinosaurs didn't go extinct. They turned into birds, and we just got our wings, basically. So we're about to take off and fly. So I would agree with everything said so far. I think you can think of machine translation no longer as a technology, but as a functionality, so that it's something that LLMs can do, something that they can contribute to as well. And I'm super excited about the idea of multimodality in the training material, so that we're able to introduce not only text but also an illustration and say translate this text with the information that you also get from this illustration and things like that. Things that we do in localization, where you're doing product descriptions and you show the translator a picture, we can do things like that, or will in short time be able to do those things with the technology as well. So for me, this is an extension. I agree completely. You can do all kinds of stuff around the edges. The contextuality is hugely important. With the exception of DeepL, a lot of systems which has some contextuality to the output. Most other systems really struggle from sentence to sentence carrying along information. And with LLMs, that seems to be a non-issue, or we seem to have gotten around that issue, so that you can present a longer text and say, translate this. And a great example to do there, if you speak a language that is gender marked, start in English and write a sentence that has it in it a bunch of times, referring to different things. And then you'll notice in the translation that it can match up those its with the other things that are being mentioned in the sentence. So it's something that MT has really struggled with to date, and is not, but we'll get over that. And the other thing is the multilingual models with a single training, granted of a much bigger system, you can address many language directions. So you get n times n minus 1 language pairs. So if you have 20 material in 20 languages, then you get 20 times 19 language pairs. You can translate to and from all of them with different degrees of quality depending on how much data you have. But those things, I truly believe, you know, a lot of us have been using MT for a long time. The acceptance rate has been going up and up and up over that entire period that I've been involved with it. And it's now simply mainstream. That there's just there are no two ways about it. So why you wouldn't be using MT in a lot of use cases, I think it's a non-issue at this point.
I am not sure there's much left to say. I'll bring another perspective, and I hope a lot of you are in the same situation. We haven't really piloted or tested such technology yet. We're a small team. We use our TMS. We're barely getting used to using MT, to be honest with you. So I hope I get some, you know, nods in the crowd. So where my head is I am hoping this is, like you were saying, another functionality, another tool that is going to empower our internal team to work better. I'm hoping this is the way for this team to get rid of some repetitive tasks or less engaging tasks and find more interesting work to do. That's from a team manager perspective, that's really where my head is. I hope this is just another tool, another functionality in the expert in the loop cycle, and that we continue working and engaging our internal team in the future. That's really where my head is.
So what I'm hearing is huge potential of LLMs going forward, especially when we think about contextual implications, but at the moment they're just one more tool in your arsenal.
Unless it utterly disrupts everything. No, and the world does genuinely go towards like kind of fully conversational commerce, right? And obviously I'm talking at it from a perspective of an e-commerce platform, but I mean that's the, do you eventually have a personal assistant who is interacting with all of these platforms for you, that's trained on just your data, et cetera, like that's, sorry, that's me thinking out loud. It's an interesting thought.
Like the AI from Tony Stark and Iron Man.
Huh.
Sort of.
If I were Google. Okay, cool.
So now that we've talked about the potential, what about obstacles in implementing disruptive technologies? And obviously we're talking about LLMs, but what's your experience? What does it take and what are the actual challenges and how do we overcome them? So maybe Ines, do you want to get started?
Yes. So I was working on a dissertation in 2015. I talked to a lot of my peers at the time and asked about, you know, their intent to implement MT at the time, and I got all this, no, it's never gonna work, we're not gonna do this. And of course we all did eventually, but we had a lot of time to think about it and get used to the idea. And for me, what's really different with this technology now is the fact that it's already here. It's already here, we're talking about it. It's going to be part of our tooling, and yes, BPs are asking about it already, you know, what are you going to do about it? Where did we invest in MT for nothing? Because now we can use this other technology. So for me, what's really challenging is the fact that it's the urgency that I feel to make it work and to try it out and make it part of our workflows faster. So again, going back to a team that is barely getting used to using MT on their usual daily work, my first reaction was to actually shield them from the technology. I remember sharing messages like, oh, don't panic, it's not gonna go so fast, but I'm coming back from this conference and I'm gonna have to have a different speech, right?
Did you listen to Jaap?
I did, and everyone actually. So I think the challenge for me is going to be to work with them to make sure that they understand there is a future for their positions. I'm talking about PMs, translators, QA engineers. There is a future, but we need to evolve, and we're going to have to do this faster than last time. So that's really the challenge I see today.
Chris, how does that resonate?
So again, like we went through that when we started really kind of using machine translation like a lot, probably around about 2017. We had to do a lot of, we have probably about 180, 200 localization specialists in-house actually sitting in market. We're very fortunate because we do huge amounts of A/B experimentation. We like very kind of rapid turnaround, etc. But we did start leveraging machine translation more and more, and we went through that whole, oh my God, what does this mean? And the reality is it changed the roles massively because some of the stuff that was being done by humans just didn't need to be done by humans. And I believe that if it doesn't need to be, then it shouldn't be. You know, it's as simple as that. If a machine can do it as effectively, fantastic. So we went through that kind of whole change management thing. And I'd say that we came out of that with more curiosity than anything else. So I don't worry so much about the kind of people side, but I worry a lot about, I think there are two things, data management, and then allied with that, privacy, makes me profoundly anxious. Because a lot of the very interesting applications, I think by necessity will start to involve PII. You know, we talk about personalization, and then it's like, okay, how is this being processed? How is this being stored in a completely kind of compliant way? You know, GDPR and all of these, all the kind of requirements we face. So that's definitely kind of top of mind. And then, yeah, I mean, I mentioned it already. In another session, I was asking a question like, how do you manage expectations? You know, I was having a drink with our CEO of Booking Holdings a couple of months ago, and literally within 30 seconds, he's asking about, so ChatGPT, you know, what are we doing around this? Because, you know, of course, every executive in the world, you know, every CEO has suddenly read an article in The Economist or Financial Times, or they've, you know, spoken to their kids or something, and they're suddenly convinced that, hey, this is brilliant. We don't need people anymore. He wasn't saying that, by the way, just to be very clear. But of course, I mean, people get super excited. Like I say, it's the first kind of time technology like this, I think, has really ignited the public's imagination, because, of course, ChatGPT in and of itself has this kind of fun kind of angle. So I think kind of managing expectations and understanding that, you know, it's the I think it's the Bill Gates kind of theory or whatever, right? The people always overestimate the speed of change and underestimate the long-term impact. And I think yeah, absolutely huge impact, but it's going to take time. It's going to take time. So that's really kind of top of mind at the moment, like just managing expectations within the business towards stakeholders that, hey, we need to do it properly. If that makes sense.
That's actually a good point. We need to do it properly. I mean, it all happened in like the last 3 or 4 months, or maybe 5 months. There's a ton of discussions going on, especially around responsibility of like ChatGPT. I think Microsoft was that they have some tool that scans your voice. They need a 5-second voice sample to completely rebuild your voice and make you say anything they want. So they didn't publish that for reasons. As a developer, I mean, every time I see a new piece of technology like that, I have a million ideas in my head. How many cool things we can build with that, and how all that can change the way people work. But we have a ton of homework to do how to use these technologies properly in a safe and secure way for everyone. And also, there's kind of a price tag to LLMs. Like, not every single company can use and train models in a way they have to do their job. Not every startup can just jump on it and use it. It's a really expensive technology and not available for everyone right now, at least.
Also, I mean, really power hungry.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it was fascinating. You know, when cryptos came out, everyone's like, "Oh my God, cryptos are amazing and Bitcoin's absolutely incredible." Until it turns out that you need like half the world's resources just to run, you know, the servers capable of kind of maintaining this, and then all the Litecoins come out.
Something like there was an article about that. Like ChatGPT is consuming a similar power than a small city.
Yeah. Exactly. So. And so there will be a bit of a kind of, and then we'll have to go to kind of lighter, like the llamas and things like this, right?
Yep.
Which will be fascinating. Training sets also make me anxious.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there are some large companies that are now being looked into by, I mean, one of the things I look after within Booking is visual content, right? And there's vast amounts of stuff that can be done around generative AI and visual content. It's super cool, but what's it being trained on? Well, other people's visual content.
Yep.
Some of that stuff's in copyright. That's much more clear-cut thing than, for example, words being in copyright.
There's that huge discussion about, like, I'm not sure if you heard about that. GitHub has that thing, GitHub Copilot, which actually, for a developer, makes it really easy to write code. They give you small suggestions. So it's trained on publicly available code on GitHub. However, not every piece of code which is openly available on GitHub is license-free. Because there's MIT, there's Apache license, there's whatever. And they just use it to train all their models. And there's a huge discussion about that, whether that's okay or not. Because someone actually found their own code, which is license protected somewhere in a suggestion, and that made him think, like, hey, what's going on? So that's why I say the responsibility is quite.
The word here is responsibility and responsible usage. And at Lengoo, I started an AI ethics board, and I think every company that's going to be using AI should have their own group of people who think about these things and come up with guidelines for their company. So I'm clearly. So we talked about problems. Yeah, they're the data issues, they're the privacy issues, they're the kind of the normal issues everyone's worried about. I'm a bit worried about the concept of the rich get richer, so that if you have data, so yes, we can now synthesize data for some languages and bootstrap language directions where we didn't have a lot of data. But the ones that we do have data for, we're going to be able to do so much more cool stuff, and that those people get that advantage. So we have some equality, accessibility issues, liability issues. It's going to take the legal community decades to catch up with the copyright issues, with liability. The example I always give, if one Tesla hits another Tesla, who's at fault? And they're both self-driving. And they were both at the dinner last night. So, who's at fault?
In that case, both are the humans. I think Tesla are fairly clear about that. And that was, I think, Jaap's point also, right? That we have to remain in charge of the technology.
And I think the way you have to think of a large language model as whether you have you write the artificial big or little, it's an intelligent system, and it needs management. Right, and so it's going to do what you ask it to do. So be careful what you ask it to do, right? And ask it in a way that actually gives you what you need to have, and doesn't do things that you don't want it to do. I am not in the camp that these things are going to be taken over the world. I do not think that anyone's going to be losing their job to AI. I think you're going to lose your job to people who use AI better than you use AI. So it's going to be a huge competitive advantage for people. And that, again, you get into an equality issue. Well, we didn't have it because our language is low density, doesn't have a lot of training material and things like that.
Okay, so there's a lot that has come out of this discussion. I'm trying to bucket this now. Good luck to me. So bucket one is really around people management. That's getting our teams ready to actually embrace new technologies. LLMs understand what they do and can't do. Change management, there's a lot there. I think Ines raised really good points. There's the whole, what workflows do we need to make that happen? What's the governance around these models? Where does it come from? Who's responsible? And then there's entire data privacy that, that's going to be a big one to crack going forward. So the future looks bright, but we have some serious challenges as well. Excellent, good. Did I summarize it well?
Yeah, if you ask us what the challenges are, we'll tell you what the challenges are.
Cool. So maybe to go a little bit more into the world of data, and I'm going to put you on the spot in a second, Chris. So if you think about Booking.com, it's a massive B2B organization, right? You have a global presence. I occasionally use you when I book my flights. So
thank you.
Very good, thank you. So data is obviously at the heart of what you do, and you also have the reputation to be an extremely data-driven organization. So what is your data strategy, or how do you actually leverage data to drive localization? Can you run us through that a little bit?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, indeed. I mean, we are kind of, I think, famously data-driven organization. At any one time, we probably have about 1,000 experiments running on our front end. And we actually run all experiments in all languages, all 46 languages, which is, on one hand, like a crazy overhead. On the other hand, gives us huge amounts of insights, right, into how different kind of languages perform versus market, etc., which I find super exciting. I think we've got a kind of quite an interesting kind of set of metrics, to be honest, around localization. We have kind of very operational metrics because we have a mixture of kind of in-house, out-of-house, and kind of various means of production. Obviously, we're always tracking kind of on-time delivery and all the stuff that people are kind of super familiar with. We have our own quality metrics, and we're already kind of always assessing those. But we're also looking indeed at like what is impact on conversion, what is impact on customer equity, what's what I'm really interested in is like what's impact on brand equity. It's like basically how do you go from like intelligibility, which is it's like a hygiene metric, probably associated with conversion, which is I can use this platform, to then I like this platform, to I love this platform. Like I think language is absolutely critical there. And it's then down to kind of tonality, and it's down to really how do you project a brand, how do you project a particular character, personality, really how do you kind of get closer and closer to the kind of customer. And of course we're very much we have customers, travelers, and then we also have partners. And then we have many partners as well, so we're also localizing for all of them. So it's quite an interesting kind of thing to manage. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Sort of. I've heard you're using a lot of data, and it's very important. But what matters to you most in your data strategy over the next couple of months? How would you summarize that? Given that you also know about LLMs, to bring it back.
Yeah. Look, I mean, you know, what matters is basically how clean your data is and how accessible your data is, right? So, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've got a team of about kind of 10 data scientists, analysts, and we have another team of about 10 machine learning scientists, engineers who just kind of focus on these topics for localization. And yeah, of course, it's really, if you want to be able to use the right data, then it's got to be accessible. And of course, in a very large company, that means also joining together like gazillions of databases and tables and things. And so I think, yeah, it's really just kind of making sure that it's accessible and clean, and that you're getting good signals. And that sounds easy, but it's not.
No, it's a huge undertaking. Yeah, I can imagine, especially for a large organization. Maybe shifting the perspective a little away from a global institution, more into service providers on stage. Jay, what would you say, what's your experience in driving automation through AI in the localization process itself? And how do you ensure you still get quality and scale?
Okay, so first I'm going to add something.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
To what Chris said, and that is collect everything. So any data that you're generating, collect it and do it in a structured way so that you can associate that information, that metadata, to the text that it's related to. Because as we move forward, any kind of information that reflects the translation effort that went into it, reflects the use of that content later, reflects the success of the use of that content later, all becomes incredibly valuable raw resources for building these systems that will be able to make recommendations on how data should be, or content should be translated, should be delivered, should be any number of things in the future. So, so get a data scientist and work on a really well thought out, structured data plan so that you can, and as I'm talking about as an LSP, so that you can associate information down to the segment level on who did the translation, what the LQA score was, what problems were found, et cetera, et cetera. And if you can do timestamps, how long did they spend looking at it, anything that you can collect legally, collect it and keep that information. So now, what was the real question?
It's hard, yeah, it's hard.
Well done. I think it's fascinating that so much has changed. We have LLMs, we have ChatGPT, but the underlying fundamentals haven't. It all comes down to the data, right? Pristine data is still trumping any algorithm in the world. So make sure you have it legally. No, I asked you about your personal experience and how you've implemented AI to make sure you automate as many localization processes as you can while still going for that crown jewel called quality and scale.
So a lot of the stuff that you actually, as soon as you implement it, it's not AI anymore, right? It becomes engineering at some point. And so when you're hooking things up, whether it's true AI or whether it's data that I got somewhere, whatever the case may be. So workflows could be changing truly dramatically as we move forward. And by that, I mean, we heard about it in the previous panel discussion, the idea of basically the idea of translating a source document simply disappearing, because content is created multilingually. So your request to the LLM is to write a description of this hotel offering, this flight offering in 27 different languages simultaneously. There is no source text. There is a source prompt, but there's no source text. And so what changes there is that your translator, which we would then call subject area linguistic expert, okay, so as long as that doesn't come out like with sex in it, I don't know. so however that works out as an acronym. But you still need language people, right? You still need language people. But the role changes from translation to expert analysis. Okay, and so because the mistakes that we see coming out of NMT and particularly with large language models are content errors as opposed to fluency errors. Okay, I'm still always amazed that people have up on their charts spelling errors. When's the last time you saw? They don't make spelling errors, right? So don't worry about spelling errors anymore. But there are now subtle differences in meaning that only somebody who's very well associated with the content or with the product, whatever it would be able to find. And so, to me, that's a step up, right? For the people who you're now a subject area expert. You're not, and again, I love translators. I'm not saying anything bad about translators. I'm a language person at heart. But in terms of the value that you bring to the chain, being a subject area linguistic expert, I think it opens up your possibilities there. And that's where the quality has to come in. And so that has to be built into the workflows, that reviews are done. And when we get into this world of multilingual content generation, then simultaneous generation, then the quality check gets just pushed out. There's not a post-editing step. That just evaporates. That just dies away. And what you have is a check on that quality. The tone of voice is probably going to be okay, but it's literally going to be stuff that's about, is this information exactly what we need to get to the end user?
Cool. So what I hear is machine learning workflows, and workflows are becoming very important.
And I think machine learning so the world is now open to have these on-the-fly workflows get generated by a model where you say either create this document or translate this document for this audience, and use the optimal process. And the optimal process is based on all of that metadata that you put it in the past, and then it's going to come up with this process, and it's going to find the translator. It's going to do. So the idea, if you're a TMS producer, your life is about to change too, because the whole idea of workflow is going to become this fluid thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Ines, moving over to you, what can you run us a little bit through your experience of how you've actually implemented AI internally at NI? I think you've started talking a little bit about it, also the change management, but can you run us a little bit more through the process?
Some of you might have heard me speak about a success story already a couple of years ago about using MT to translate our product catalog. So we have continued building on that story that we shared with Jay. And so we implemented MT, and that accelerated, the work, decreased the cost, of course. This is a huge amount of content, the biggest content type that we deal with. And but it did still require a lot of PM effort, going back to the workflows. And so the next step for us was to actually take control of that MT process internally and automate the whole process. So we actually went from an SLA of 10 days to 1 day. Because we used to send it out, we used to have it translated, post-edited, and then back to us. The PM would go over it, try to figure out what, where the risks were, what needed to be reviewed, and so on. So the latest change that we have implemented is actually to run that MT process internally, and then to send it back to our customer directly. And the only stop or workflow quality control step that we have right now. It's an automatic QA check. And if we were able to automate that workflow, so if it fails the check, then we send it back to the PM and they will decide what to do with it. Otherwise, we just deliver back to the customer. So we just went from this, 2 weeks
What
to...
kind of checks do you do?
It's an automatic check inside our TMS. Very simple. So we decided not to try to... I'm looking forward to the opportunities, of the LLMs, that are going to bring in terms of how do you automate that quality control. Because right now we just decided to go very simple. Okay, let's not complicate things. If it fails, the numbers are not matching, the length is really different, then we understand something went wrong and we want to check it. Otherwise, we're just sending it back. What is really important for us in this process improvement is that we gain 100 hours of PM work per year, and the PM capacity is really what limits us in our capacity to output. So the more PM time we can free, the more work we can actually, continue doing. And all the savings that came from this automation, we are reinvesting in modernizing our workflows. And so that was really, really interesting for us. And it gives the translators time back to, again, work on more interesting things, engage, and now time to develop to become, what did you say they were going to be?
Subject area linguistic expert. That's what we'll call it.
Okay, yeah. So we'll need a lot of free time to develop these folks into becoming these experts that, oversee the work of machines. So that's also welcome there.
But clearly the drive is to management by exception, right? Or in my old industry, we call it straight-through processing. Process everything straight through and only look at the edge cases or the exceptions.
Yeah.
Cool. It's great that some industries are, although they're different, the problems are the same.
It just occurred to me that subject area linguistic expert spells sales. So, so translators are now part of sales.
Okay.
So
I like how we just did that. Okay, if we maybe in our last question zoom out again, I think we had a very detailed discussion within the organizations around machine learning, machine translation. If we're zooming out a little bit, Tim, and this question is obviously for you, is when you observed the localization market over the last couple of years, where do you think, how have most efficiencies been driven? What have you observed? What changes have we seen?
There's two sides to that. I would say well, I'm a developer at heart, so from a technological view, there's a lot more trust. So like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, if you think of machine translation, everyone was like, yeah, we can't really automate that because like we would have to look at it anyway because no one was trusting it. That's getting a lot better. We can see that especially with DeepL a lot. People trust the machine translation even in the background, so a lot more automation things are made possible by that because it's a lot more trustworthy, more reliable. But there's also a human aspect that the way, I mean, you sort of said it as well, that the way people work, the way translators work is completely changing. And in a really good way, it makes them really more efficient because if you think back, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, people had to use their Oxford dictionary. Then we had online dictionaries. These online dictionaries turned into something where I think Google Translate was online in 2006 or something, and where you could actually ask a sentence more than just single word. It's more than a dictionary, but it still didn't really help you to an extent as the tools we have today, because you still had to translate all the text. We didn't have anything like translation memories, stuff like that. We didn't have anything like that. So a friend of mine is working as a translator in a research institute in Germany, and she was translating user guides, user manuals, but also results from various research projects. And she pretty much translated everything again and again, sort of. And that's completely changing because, like you said it yourself, people are more turning into, like quality assurance people. Like they have, like, no idea, ChatGPT, DeepL, whatever, translate the bulk load of work, and they just make sure it's great. They are rephrasing things, they're fixing errors, they're making sure that the right terminology was chosen, stuff like that, which allows them to get way more done in way less time. because they don't have to do the main, like Headspace is a lot more free for other things. So
that's actually a really nice end. So we're not going to lose our jobs, but our roles will change. And I think we need to wrap our domain expertise really around machine learning, improving quality in the data. That's very nice.